I'm just
Oh,
I'm just trying to look like, I'm younger. So
well,
I'm kind of
you look
wearing my hair
great.
differently.
Well, we're live now. I just commented on your look. That's all people heard. But I look very sharp too, you said. So we're looking
Yes, you
great
do.
live, and there's a plenty to talk about. So glad to have you joining me. And we haven't talked since before the election. And so you've got
Oh.
a whole different agenda now that you've got to deal with and struggles that you got to deal with. So let's start with just kind of where you thought you were going to be, and then we're going to get to the Reconciliation Act and all these cuts. But as soon as Trump gets elected and you see who he starts appointing, you can, like, how do you start planning at AFT for how to handle
Mhm.
this obvious fight?
Well, first off, Pete, it's always amazing to see you. And I love that we're both, I mean, I, I'm from Clarkstown, so I feel like we're family.
Yeah,
I grew
it's
up there.
yeah. Randy, of course, grew up in the school that my daughters are one still
Right,
in, and that I've been in the fight. She knows all about the
right,
local board of education and the national board of education fight.
right,
So yeah, it's
exactly
great
right.
to connect that
So,
way.
so let me just say, what I love about my members is that right after the election, we did some polling and we posited the question. We basically said, we think what we should be continuing to do is fight for a better life for people. That the through line in our membership is that everybody basically makes a difference in somebody else's life, whether it's an educator, a healthcare professional, or somebody in public services. And over 90% of our folks said, yeah, that's our agenda. And look, when you have a president who actually believes in having a better life, then you're fighting over policy and you're fighting about how fast you can get it done. Like, the industrial policy that Joe Biden did started creating a lot more manufacturing jobs. And that's part of what we started pinning our career tech ed work to, in terms
Right.
of having a pipeline from high school to college to high school to work in addition to a college pipeline. But what happens is when you have a president who doesn't believe in any of that, you got to fight before you move forward, but you still have to have an agenda that moves forward. And I think oftentimes what happened when people start talking about democracy, democracy, democracy is that if you're not steeped, sorry, that's my dog in back of me, if you're
Mhm.
not steeped in um, the understanding that a democracy is the only way working people over the long term can have a voice for progress, then you just really think about democracy as, oh, all you care about is the status quo. And I
It's
think that
really well
that
said.
was a huge
Yeah.
problem in
Yeah.
the election. And listening to John Roberts say in the last couple of weeks, oh, all we have to do is we should have been teaching civics more in schools. And I look, he's the Supreme Court. I agree we have to teach civics more. But when you do No Child Left Behind, so the fixation is on test scores. Where's the time to teach civics? Where's the
Right.
time to do project based instruction? And to teach civics, you have to be willing to spend the time to solve a problem, which means it's not 5 minutes of teaching. These are the three branches of government. So it's a long way of basically saying the membership, I think, really said, still focus on a better life, but we got to fight somebody who wants to try to make it worse. And now, several months into his um, presidency, I think the uncertainty on the economy and, frankly, on the democracy, there's a lot more people today that see he's a problem than saw it on November 5th.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're right about that. And you see the vision kind of coalescing, coming to fruition. Not the
Right.
vision of the Trump administration. I mean, I've been talking to you for a long time, but even before that, I suppose you could say from the point the Department of Education was created, it has been under threat to be destroyed. What
Right.
does it mean when they say they're going to destroy, disrupt, take apart, and the Department of Education, and that you appoint someone who openly says that is her goal. Linda McMahon was in hearings last week being asked about this. What does it mean to have the Department of Education cut or completely destroyed? What does that mean for America's students, for Americans educators, for us?
So let's take it in two ways. One, there's the practical. Let me put that aside for a second.
Hmm.
Two, there's the symbolic. And the symbolic is really, really, in a country like America, the United States of America, the first things you do is assault universities and assault education. You're basically saying, sorry, I get so angry about this.
We love
You're
it.
basically saying, I don't care that you don't care about other people's children. And I don't care if other people's children are black or white or Jewish, Christian. You're saying when you want to get rid of education, you don't care about other people's children. You care about your own. You'll make sure your own
Well,
gets
I
good
care about
education,
I
but
care
not
about
other
middle
people's children.
income. I care about middle income and upper affluent people's children. I don't care as much about lower income.
No, I don't actually think they care about that either, frankly. If you
Hmm.
look at the big ugly, I don't think they care about that either. I think that the symbolic issue here, because even on the stuff they care about, when they say they care about AI or career tech ed, they didn't put any money in there either.
Right.
So they care about their friends and the people they care about getting rich, but I don't think they care about other people's children, whoever they are. And I think so that's a symbolic value when you say you're getting rid of the Department of Education because, spoiler alert, the department doesn't control curriculum. We actually all changed that in 2015, and the department is no longer the HR director of any school district. We changed that also in 2015. So basically what the department does, and this gets to the nitty-gritty, it actually is an opportunity gap filler. That's what it does. So poor kids, Pell Grants to go to college. Poor kids in even in Clarkstown get Title I funding
Yep.
so that they can have after school activities, lower class sizes, a reading specialist. And because of school wide projects, you can make that happen for everybody. And literally 26 million kids. Kids with disabilities get IDEA. So it's a gap filler. And basically, they don't want to fill those gaps. And instead, what they're doing is they want to take this money and they want to make it a piggy bank for the rich. They're basically saying, okay, let's put it into vouchers. Let's call this choice. I mean, it is somebody's choice, it's the school's choice. Like private schools get to decide who they want, it's not a parent's choice. And in fact, in all these states which have had vouchers, and so say a voucher is $7,000 or $5,000, you see the Tony private schools increasing their tuition so they still get to make the decisions about who they want. And 70% of the people who get these vouchers in the states that have them are basically rich. So on top of it, it's a piggy bank for the rich to basically so when people say that this big new reconciliation bill is the big ugly, I know the president calls it the big beautiful bill. I kind of call it is definitely big, but I call it the big ugly. But what it really is it the biggest transfer of wealth from poor and middle class to rich
Right.
probably ever.
Is there policy issues in the big ugly as well? I call it the big bad billionaires bill.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
policy pronouncements? Because there's so much in this bill that I don't even know if you guys at AFT have gotten to get through it and understand what it means.
Yeah.
But between the cuts to the Department of Education, Doge, and this giant piece of legislation, it's hard to know what that means for America's public schools.
Well, there's policy issues in it. It's basically taking money and look, some of it, I mean, I know I'll get some of my folks will say, why are you saying this? But some of it, like extending 529s, which were the savings account for higher ed, extending it to K-12. I mean, that's a perfectly legitimate policy that's tucked in this bill somewhere. But 95% of what's tucked in this bill, and notice the Republicans came into power, they said, no, we're going to make sure people can read bills, we're going to make sure they 24 hours, none of that. What's mostly in this bill in terms of policy is they got a lot more money for defense. They got they basically take away a lot of the money that was done to try to create new different ways of energy. They take away $800 billion of funding for people on Medicaid, which by our account means about 13 million people will be off Medicaid, and
Unbelievable.
they take away the funding for the ACA tax credits. The stuff that they do for working class people are weird. We should frankly have a working class tax cut. Like, let's
Yes.
just have a working class tax cut. Like, let's do that for everybody who earns less than $70,000. But instead, what they do, if you and then the SNAP funding, nutritional assistance, is terrible. Basically, is going to put every food bank out of business. And on education, it's this piggy bank to take funds away from education. That's what they're doing with this new voucher tax shelter. But what they also do is basically make college far less affordable or attainable for most of the kids who are not rich at the same time as they're
Right.
assaulting colleges. So the policy in here, and then because there's so much deficit increasing, it because it increases the deficit so much, there's a $500 billion cut to Medicare too. So they've now cut Medicare, they've cut Medicaid, they've cut food assistance, they've cut college affordability. The stuff for regular folks is negligible. And so when you look at it, basically people who earn less than 51,000 are going to be paying more taxes. And people who earn more than 4 million or have 4 million in passive income, they're going to they're going to get a tax return of about $400,000.
Also, the one thing you didn't
That's the
mention,
bill.
that was a, I didn't ask specifically about this, but within all of that too, or outside all of that, the trade war tariffs are the largest tax increase
Yeah.
in a generation ever, maybe, that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
In effect, that's what they are, this trade war. So you're losing any kind of benefits or opportunity on one end, and you're also paying more taxes if you are someone in the lower half or lower thirds, really,
Yeah.
even of wage earners. It's
And the and
really,
it's and for the New Yorkers and the New Jersey folk, I mean, I've been a big believer in SALT, state and local tax deduction. I've tried to get it restored. The way in which they cut it by having a limit on top of AGI and all these other stuff, that's intended to continue the flow out of our states of people who make a lot of money. Like people who make a lot of money in our states basically pay a lot of taxes, and but they could get their state and local taxes a deduction off their federal. So
yeah.
it was incentivizing the the services that New York, New Jersey, California do. So by them creating a cap there, it was just venal. They just
I mean,
want people to leave our states.
it's surprising that blue state MAGA Trumpers, weren't turned off just by that alone. But let me ask you before I let you go here, what are you asking people to do, whether we are a member of a union
Good.
or not? What can we do? To have our voices heard. We feel so limited and frustrated with what we can do. You're one of the most inspiring leaders. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. If you tell me to go do something, I will go do it no matter what it is. Yes, I will jump off that. I will
No,
sail a
no. I
Mexican
do not
naval
want
ship.
you I do not want you hurting yourself. We
I
need you
would
to
if
be
you told me
part.
to.
No, but A, I wouldn't tell you to, and B, please do not do it even if I did. So
I'm
but
just
this is
showing
the
off is usually how I hurt myself. But
this is the this is what we need people to do. The courts are holding, but look what happens when a law firm like Perkins Coie or a college like Harvard,
Yeah.
I mean, us too, we've lost our grants from the federal government. It's like, we had grants for career tech ed, they took them away. I mean,
Crazy.
when people stand up, they will target them and they will bully them. But what's happened is that the more people stand up, the less chance that people are going to get bullied. So the key really is this is the key. Every time we stop a bully or we stop the backsliding of democracy, sorry, I'm being so,
No.
11th grade social studies teacher on you, it's because people stand up and they're not fearful or they're not apathetic. The dictators, the authoritarians, they want people to be either fearful or apathetic. They want people to say, oh, I hate politics, or what can I do? So, the most important thing to do, like June 14th, no King's Day, we have the most important thing to do is to show up, represent, be out on the streets, not by yourself, but with other people.
Right.
That's the most important thing to do right now. And then what we're doing is we're trying to really show the harm that's happening with all these cuts in terms of either public education, college, or or healthcare or social security. But we're also still fighting for a better life and for policies, either on a local or state level, to make a better life. And then there's lots of other groups that are doing great things. So even let me boast a little bit about what my wife is doing. She's a rabbi. She started something called the Beacon Project. And what they're doing is they're basically doing a split screen. They're shining a light when there's cruelty, they're shining a light for kindness. And she started it because people said, I'm
Hmm.
not in a union. I don't have a big group. What can I do alone? Just like your question, what can I do? What can I do? So every Thursday night now, in groups around the country, and it takes like two or three people. They come together on a corner. They have signs from 7 to 7:30 every Thursday night, wherever they are. So
I like it.
Teaneck, which started with like three or four people, there's now 50 people in Teaneck in the park doing that. In our corner in Inwood, New York, there's 25 people every Thursday night from 7 to 7:30, including this amazing kid who has a sign that says, in my class I learned that presidents are not kings. So you think about June 14th, Flag Day. We're America. We're not about kings, we're about patriotism. So take Flag Day, where so many veterans, so many people in our armed forces fought for us to have freedom. That's why we have no King's Day. Showing up in community with each other, it sends a message not only to Donald Trump, sends a message to your congressman that we are not going away. We want our country back. We want it to be better, but don't take away our health care. Don't
Yeah.
take away our public schools. Don't do this. Don't cut essential services for people so you can have tax cuts for billionaires.
And of course, the other thing those kinds of initiatives do and gatherings do is it reminds people that you're not alone and that there is
Exactly.
solidarity, and no one knows about solidarity more than you. So
Exactly.
thank you so much for joining me. As always, it's great to see you. I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend and keep up
You
the great
too.
work
You
leading and
too, my friend.
inspiring us, Randy. Really appreciate you as always.
Thank you, Pete.
All
Thank
right.
you.